Man, what is so special about this thing anyway? Man, I gotta give me one of those. Yo, what is going on, guys? Dr. Ethan Turner here with the Fantasy Headliners, and I got myself some new digs. I flew all the way out to North Carolina so that I could see my boy Jake and record in the master studio of Headliner Nation. So if you guys enjoy that, make sure you hit the like button because the doc needs to be able to afford tickets back to Illinois at the end of the week. But you guys know the deal. The injury update show is all about me going through every NFL lineup of the week and telling you guys about all the injuries that you need to know about for your fantasy teams. So let's get into it. Week 13 injury update show brought to you, as always, by our boys over at Fantrax. Make sure you download that app and let's get into it. All right, you guys know the deal. Always going to start out with our moment of silence for guys whose injuries cause them to miss the rest of the fantasy season. As we get to the end of the NFL regular season, we're going to have more guys on this moment of silence list. This week, we got quite a few. First up, we got the Bears losing two guys for the year, Darnell Mooney and safety Eddie Jackson. Jackson's dealing with a Liz Frank injury. Mooney has a major ankle injury that does require surgery. Vikings cornerback Andrew Booth had knee surgery. The surgery exposed that the injury was a little bit more serious than they initially thought. He is also done for the year. Elijah Mitchell, 49ers running back, has another MCL tear. I think this is the third or fourth time he has torn his MCL. Second time this year. Timetable right now is at about 6 to 8 weeks. Do not expect him back in the regular season. Bills linebacker Von Miller avoided a scary looking injury, thought it was an ACL on video at first. Luckily it was not, but he does have a lateral meniscus tear, was placed on IR, cannot return until week 17. Unlikely we see him in the regular season. Then finally, Rams wide receiver Allen Robinson, done for the year with a foot fracture. It is not a Liz Frank injury. It is a different bone in the foot, but a fracture nonetheless. The Rams have discussed shutting down multiple players, including Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp for the year. Cooper Kupp already on IR, so we'll see if they bring him back, but no official word on them, so I'll talk about them a little bit later. Let's pour one out for these guys in the chat down below. Tough week. Tough week. But I didn't have a tough week when we're talking about the accuracy recap from week 12. 94% accurate on in-out calls last week, 88% on the year. Needed a bounce back week, and I got it. Had a few misses, though. Some guys that I thought would be in that ended up not playing. Justin Burris, PJ Walker, Vita Vea, and Chase Young. And I had one guy who I thought was going to be out, ended up playing, and that was Demarcus Robinson. But overall, not a whole lot of misses for me last week. Like to see that. Did have a few hits, though. DeAndre Swift, I said that he's probably trended more towards being an RB3 this week. He did finish as the RB35 on the week. Isaiah Pacheco, I said was going to be an RB2, finished as the RB13 in half PPR, so kind of hit that one right on the head. He was a high-end RB2, but an RB2 nonetheless. And then we got two starts I told you guys to make, Samaje Perine and Jeff Wilson. Perine finished as the RB9 on the week. Wilson finished with over 10 half PPR points, was the RB25. I was hoping for a little bit better week from him, but still not a bad week for Jeff Wilson. Definitely a startable running back. We said that Keenan Allen coming back off that injury was going to be a wide receiver too. He finished with 13.4 half PPR points and did finish as a wide receiver too with the wide receiver 21 on the week. So solid week for Keenan Allen. And then I did mention that it was a really tough matchup for Deebo Samuel last week. Finished as the wide receiver 64 on the week. Not a good week for Deebo Samuel. Only 4.3 half PPR points. So I didn't tell you to sit him, but I did say that his matchup was going to be pretty tough. And so hopefully you took that advice and maybe you had a better option than Deebo Samuel last week. All right, guys, heading into the matchups this week, we do have two teams on bye this week, Arizona and Carolina. If you want to know about players from those teams, let me know in the comments down below. I will get to as many of those comments as I can. Thursday Night Football, Bills at New England. No major injuries to talk about in terms of new injuries, but the Bills quarterback Josh Allen dealing with that UCL sprain was back practicing in full this week, a good sign that the elbow is still improving. Overall, the Bills are getting healthy after a few rough weeks with multiple key players missing games, so it's good to see the Bills healthy. New England, want to talk about briefly, running back Damien Harris dealing with that thigh strain. Injury was described as week to week prior to this week. Normal recovery timeline for something like this is about 2 to 4 weeks. So I'm not surprised that he is not playing this week, and I would be surprised if we see him even next week. So Rhamondre Stevenson going to continue to be a bell cow for you if you have him on your fantasy squads. Moving on to the rest of the games this week, we got Pittsburgh at Atlanta. Pittsburgh Steelers running back Najee Harris dealing with an oblique strain, left the game, was not able to return on Monday on a shortened week, at least shortened by at least a day. Still not practicing, does not look like he is going to be able to play. Benny Snell came in as a reserve, but that was because running back Jaylen Warren was dealing with a hamstring strain, didn't play on Monday, but is back practicing in full. He should step into a solid workload in the passing game, at least. I think in PPR leagues, I like Jaylen Warren as kind of a low-end RB2 this week. And then Atlanta doesn't really have anything major going on, so not a whole lot to talk about with the Atlanta Falcons. Heading over to the Denver Broncos at the Baltimore Ravens. Broncos wide receiver Jerry Jeudy dealing with that ankle sprain that's kept him out for 2 straight weeks. Is not practicing as of Thursday. Doesn't look like he's going to play. Wide receiver KJ Hamler dealing with the hamstring strain. Reports are that Hamler's hamstring injury did get worse. He had a setback with this, so he is even further out from a return. Might as well reset the timeline at that 2 to 4 week mark. He's not expected to play either. Courtland Sutton looking like another high target wide receiver 2 week for him this week. And don't forget about running back Mike Boone. He's been on IR, was designated to return from IR, and Nathaniel Hackett has already publicly said that Mike Boone could be the starter when he comes back and is healthy. So if Mike Boone's sitting out there on waivers, just consider him as an option. He fits much more of that Javonte Williams role in the pass catching game, and we saw that that role could be very valuable at the beginning of the season when Williams was healthy. So keep an eye out on Mike Boone. If he is available in waivers, I would pick him up if you're going to need some running back help, especially in PPR leagues. For the Ravens, safety Kyle Hamilton dealing with that knee sprain, missed last week, but is back practicing in a limited capacity. He is on track to return, but cornerback Marlon Humphrey now dealing with an ankle injury. He was limited in practice on Thursday after resting Wednesday. It does appear like both these guys are going to play this week, but just keep an eye on it. If Marlon Humphrey misses this game, that's going to be another thing to look at for Courtland Sutton this week. Marlon Humphrey was supposed to be matching up with Courtland Sutton often, so we'll see what happens with Marlon Humphrey. I do think he's going to play, but if he sits, Courtland Sutton, another great opportunity for him. J.K. Dobbins, running back, dealing with that knee scope, was designated to return from IR, but I've not seen anything official about him playing this week in terms of being on the field. So we'll see what happens. He is eligible to return this week if the team opts to return. I don't really think he's worth starting if they play him this week. I'm probably not looking to start him at all for the rest of the year. I think Gus Edwards is going to take over this role. I just don't really see what J.K. Dobbins is going to do for this team when he comes back. I just don't think that he's got it this year. It's a rough year coming off the ACL injury last year. Moving on to Green Bay at Chicago, big rivalry game this week. The Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers dealing with a thumb fracture that he had previously, but also picked up a rib injury, left with that rib injury, and has been playing through the thumb issue for a while, so I'm not really too worried about that. The rib issue is concerning, but he did get a limited practice in on Thursday and said that he expects to play against the Bears, a team historically he just kind of owns. I mean, it's hard to argue with the numbers with Aaron Rodgers against the Bears specifically. Running back Aaron Jones dealing with shin and glute injuries. He's been limited in practice, but he's been playing through these issues and not something I expect him to miss this game for. And then running back A.J. Dillon showed up this week with a quad strain. Dillon is banged up as well, but I do think that he's still practicing and he should be able to play through this. So we shouldn't have any issues with the running backs for the Packers. As for the Bears, quarterback Justin Fields dealing with that AC sprain was not able to play last week and lost arguably his best wide receiver in Darnell Mooney. The good news is he is coming back in practicing in full this week, should be able to return in a big game against the Packers. Safety Jaquan Brisker dealing with that concussion, still not practicing in concussion protocol. 2 DNPs to start the week. I do not expect him to clear by Sunday. Offensive tackle Larry Barome dealing with knee and ankle injuries, has not been practicing, doesn't look like he is going to play. And then cornerback Kyler Gordon dealing with a concussion, also not practicing, also unlikely to play. So the Bears are pretty banged up this week. Heading over to Jacksonville at Detroit. Jacksonville running back Travis Etienne left with a foot sprain. Interesting, he left the game on Sunday, didn't return as a precaution per the team. Now, no, we did have a Liz Frank injury for him last year, cost him his whole rookie year. But I am a little concerned that the team thought that foot sprain or foot injury that he had on Sunday was so bad that they needed to precautionarily take him out of the game. He is back practicing in a limited capacity this week. So I'm not sure about the overabundance of caution with Travis Etienne, but it's still a good matchup if he is playing. But I do think the team could rely on Darrell Henderson a little bit more, and that could cut into Etienne's work if he is active. So I think Etienne will probably play. He's a game time decision for Sunday, but just know he doesn't have the ceiling that I would expect him to have in a normal week. Detroit's got all sorts of injuries going on the offensive line. Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, Penny Sewell, all limited in practice. But starting guard Evan Brown's ankle injury is the one that I'm concerned about the most. He's not practicing, does not appear to be on track to play. So the rest of those guys have been limited, but Evan Brown does not look like he is going to be able to play this week. Linebacker Julian Okwara dealing with an elbow injury. Okwara left on Thanksgiving, left that game, and this injury doesn't really have a whole lot of info regarding it. I just couldn't really find a whole lot. Hasn't been able to practice, though. Doesn't look like he is going to be able to play. And then keep an eye on wide receiver Jameson Williams. He's coming back from that ACL tear in college that the team still drafted him, even though he tore his ACL in January of this year. He's been running routes in practice and before games, but isn't taking any contact. I expect him to be out a few more weeks as they build him back up and prepare him for his first NFL game. I do think he's going to play at some point this year, but I don't think that they're really pushing him much. And they've already got a top 5 pick locked in with the Rams playing so terribly and everyone being hurt. So I don't really think the team is playing necessarily for this season. Moving on to Cleveland at Houston. The Browns tight end David Njoku, dealing with a knee sprain, is dealing with a new issue. This is not related to his ankle injury from earlier. Has not been as effective as he's been since that ankle injury, before that ankle injury, that is. But last week's game did have a touchdown, is still one of those tight ends that you can trust for the volume. Hasn't been practicing, doesn't look like he's going to be able to suit up if he does not practice on Friday. Cornerback Denzel Ward, dealing with an ankle sprain for the Browns, was downgraded on Thursday with that ankle injury. I am a little bit concerned that he will not be able to play. He's a game time decision, but any practice on Friday would be a really good sign, would really help his chances. Texans cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. dealing with that hamstring strain, isn't practicing this week, has missed the last 2 contests with this injury. Unfortunately, I don't expect him to return either. Heading over to the Jets at Minnesota. Jets running back Michael Carter dealing with an ankle sprain, not practicing this week after leaving Sunday's game. Carter doesn't appear on track to play, and that opens up things for Bam Knight. At least that's what everyone wants you to think. I'm not ruling out a Ty Johnson spoiler week for everyone that fell in love with Bam Knight on waivers. If I'm being honest, probably not starting either of these guys, but just know Ty Johnson is not going to go away, a guy who caught a lot of passes for this team last year. Safety Ashton Davis dealing with a hamstring strain, not practicing all week. Bad news for the Jets defense, as he's one of the few players that is fast enough and can run stride for stride with Justin Jefferson. If Davis sits, and I expect him to, we may have an all-time classic cornerback wide receiver matchup with Justin Jefferson, arguably the best young wide receiver in the league, going up against arguably the best young cornerback in the league, Sauce Gardner. That alone makes this a watchable game because I want to see how those two battle it out. And this could be one that we're talking about every single year as just a must-watch cornerback wide receiver matchup. The Vikings left tackle Christian Darrisaw dealing with that concussion. Has another week of back-to-back DNPs to start the week. Doesn't look like we're going to see him. Running back Dalvin Cook appears to have suffered the most without Christian Darrisaw. So 2 straight underwhelming performances with him. Have to think that's related to losing an all-pro tackle like Darrisaw. Heading over to the Washington Commanders at the New York Giants. Commanders running back Antonio Gibson dealing with a foot injury. Was noticeably absent at the end of Washington's Week 12 game and was downgraded on Thursday to a DNP. So what's that mean for us? It means that he's not on track to play, and if he sits, I do love Brian Robinson in this matchup. He is my prize pick. Play of the week. Head on over to Prize Picks. Use the code Headliners. Get $100 deposit, first deposit match. You deposit $100. Prize Picks going to match it for you when you use the code Headliners. Slam the over on B-Rob's rushing total of 63.5 yards. No Antonio Gibson. Definitely need to be taking advantage of this one. Giants got quite a few injuries to talk about. Cornerback Adoree Jackson dealing with a knee injury. O-line Joshua Ezeude and Shane Lemieux, 2 offensive linemen. None of those guys are practicing. Does not look like any of them are going to be able to play. Wide receiver Darius Slayton picked up an illness, so he's not practicing on Thursday. Still a good chance that he plays on Sunday, but just know he's sick. And then some good news here in the injury show. I know I don't usually deliver the good news, but tight end Daniel Bellinger dealing with that orbital fracture has kept him out for about a month now. He was an upgrade to a limited practice schedule this week. Does look like he's close. Probably still a game time decision, but it's good to see. If you need a tight end, that Daniel Bellinger might be able to come back, give you a little bit of value. I would be considering him if I'm short on tight ends, or if you've been dealing with any of the other litany of tight end injuries across the league. Daniel Bellinger is a guy that might be available on waivers that did have a pretty solid role before he got hurt. Moving on to Tennessee at Philly. Tennessee defensive end Jeffrey Simmons dealing with an ankle injury. Has not practiced yet this week. Seems like he is unlikely to play. Good news for the Eagles running game. Simmons, one of the better run stoppers on this Tennessee Titans defense. And then wide receiver Treylon Burks dealing with illness, sitting on Thursday. Likely a game time decision. We'll see what happens with Burks, but I still think there's a good chance that he plays. Eagles cornerback CJ Gardner-Johnson dealing with a really brutal injury here, a kidney laceration. Never want to hear that. Brutal injury, and just one that you can't really rehab. There's not much you can do for that. He will be out indefinitely. I don't expect this to end his season, but he's going to be out for a few weeks, probably about 4 to 6 if I had to guess. Wide receiver Devontae Smith dealing with a groin strain, has been limited in practice, but I still expect him to play on Sunday. He's been a bit underwhelming despite the fact that Dallas Goedert has been out for a few weeks now. I really thought that Devontae Smith would get a bump in his production, but we haven't really seen it in the last 2 weeks. He's still kind of boom or bust for me week to week. Moving on to the Seahawks at the Rams. Seattle doesn't really have any major injuries. Does have multiple players missing practice due to illness, so we'll have to keep an eye on that to see if it gets any worse. Currently, it's not anybody that we really care about too much from a fantasy perspective, but just know that their sickness is going through the Seattle locker room right now. As for the Rams, quarterback Matthew Stafford dealing with concussion and neck injuries. Stafford isn't expected to play this week, and the team is considering what to do with the Super Bowl winning quarterback. There's even rumors that the season could be a wash. They could sit Matthew Stafford along with Cooper Kupp. Allen Robinson's already out. And defensive lineman Aaron Donald, dealing with an ankle sprain now, is expected to miss this week with that injury. And the team's talking about possibly shutting him down. Now, I don't think that Aaron Donald is going to want to sit intentionally. So he's got a lot of stuff going on in terms of just his all-time ranks for sacks and just trying to make a case to be the best defensive lineman of all time in the NFL. I don't think he's going to want to just take 6 or 7 games off just because. So I doubt that happens, but just know there are some rumors about the Rams wanting to possibly do that. And then running back Cam Akers dealing with illness. He is sick, putting his availability a little bit in question on Sunday. Kyren Williams is in line to start for the team and does have a little bit of value as an RB3. He's a decent pass catcher. Haven't seen him at a full strength yet. I'd like to see what he can do as the starter. Heading over to one of the better games of the week, Miami at San Francisco. Big game for both of these teams, trying to figure out, are they contenders or pretenders? This is going to be a good test for both teams. Really looking forward to watching this one with my boy Jake here in North Carolina. But the Dolphins left tackle Teron Armstead dealing with toe and pec injuries. He's got a pec strain, the one that we're most concerned about. Isn't practicing this week after this injury against Houston last week. I'm not expecting him to play. So we'll see what happens with the Dolphins without left tackle Teron Armstead. The other problem they have is that on the other side of the ball, Austin Jackson, as in other side of the line, the ball in the middle, the other offensive tackle, Austin Jackson, dealing with an ankle sprain, also not practicing. So this could be a week where the Dolphins are without both tackles as they go up against a very, very good 49ers D-line. I could see something outrageous with 3, maybe 4 sacks from the 49ers this week. And then running back Raheem Mostert dealing with that knee sprain. He is back practicing in a limited capacity. Good to see that, but he's banged up. The offensive line is banged up. I'm not starting Raheem Mostert if he is back playing this week, which it does look like he's on pace to do. As for the 49ers and the injury that most people are probably watching this video for, running back Christian McCaffrey dealing with what he is describing as knee irritation. Don't really know what that means. It could just be inflammation. It could be like a tendonitis issue, not really a true structural issue. But he sat on Wednesday. The good news is he told reporters that he fully expects to play, that he is over this. It sounds like it was just a minor issue. And after a few days of rest, he's back playing okay. Elijah Mitchell's hurt, opening up the door again for big games from CMC, which is what we want from a fantasy perspective. Defensive lineman Eric Armstead, another positive update for you guys this week. He has missed a good chunk, hasn't played since week 3 actually, but was limited this week with his foot and ankle injuries. Has me a little optimistic that he might be able to come back and play as soon as Sunday. Game time decision, but significant upgrade over the last 2 months. And then defensive lineman Charles Omenihu. I always struggle with this name now. I'm going to get this, okay? Omenihu. Gosh, there it was. Man, that was tough. Don't judge the jock for this, all right? I'm doing my best. I'm in unfamiliar circumstances. I'm not used to the office. I'm not used to the screen. That's the problem. It's not because I just can't really say that guy's name. Anyway, he's got a knee sprain. Didn't practice on Wednesday, but does seem like he's going to be able to play after getting some work in on Thursday. And like I said, this 49ers defensive line is ready to feast against a banged-up Dolphins offensive line. Moving on to the must-watch game of the week. We got Kansas City at Cincinnati, 2 high-powered offenses against 2 okay defenses. We'll put it that way. The Chiefs running back Jerick McKinnon dealing with a hamstring strain, not practicing after leaving the game on Sunday with that hamstring strain. I don't know if the Chiefs trust Isaiah Pacheco to catch passes, so we may still see Ronald Jones getting some work on Sunday catching passes, but I'm still trusting Pacheco to be a solid running back and lead the team in touches. Wide receiver Kadarius Toney dealing with that hamstring strain. No practice time yet as of this week for Toney. The team does have the luxury of sitting him, giving him time to rest. We know that it is a little bit frustrating that Toney, when he got traded, did not actually shake the soft tissue injuries that he had and plagued him last year. So it's just something that you have to deal with Toney. When he's healthy, he's dynamic, but he's not always healthy. Bengals running back Joe Mixon dealing with concussion. Missed last week, back practicing in limited capacity, but still in concussion protocol as of this recording. I'm expecting him to be able to pass that protocol and play. I'm hoping we get news on that on Friday or Saturday, but I do think he's going to play. As for wide receiver Jamar Chase and his hip fracture, though, he's been out for 5 weeks. The team discovered that fracture, and we thought he'd be back by now. He's not back yet. He is practicing in limited capacity again this week. So this is now the third week in a row he's been practicing in some type of capacity, but it does give me a little bit of hope that Chase might be back this week, and what a game for him to come back in and just absolutely blow up against the Kansas City Chiefs. This one is must watch. Moving on to the Chargers at Las Vegas. Chargers offensive lineman Corey Linsley has been dealing with a concussion, and offensive tackle Trey Pipkins has a knee sprain. So 2 offensive linemen starting for the Chargers, both of them not practicing. Doesn't look like they are going to be able to play. Not good news for Austin Eckler as a runner this week. And then wide receiver Mike Williams dealing with that high ankle sprain. Another week of work with the trainers for Williams. He's unlikely to play this week. Raiders dealing with running back Josh Jacobs and his calf injury. I'm going to put quotes on that. Calf injury. A lot of people asking Kyle about this last week. He had to hit me up in the chat, let him know that I was not worried about it, and for good reason. He was. What I just saw today was the first running back with over 225 rushing yards and over 75 passing yards. I just can't believe that or receiving yards, not passing yards, but just can't believe those numbers from Josh Jacobs. Absolutely insane. I'm not too worried about this. They're dealing with the calf injury. He is getting treatment all week. Chargers have been really friendly to running backs in the past, and nobody is riding a hotter hand right now than Josh Jacobs, so feel free starting him this week especially. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, Indianapolis at Dallas. Colts cornerback Kenny Moore II, dealing with an ankle sprain, has already been ruled out for the week with this ankle injury. This helps basically everyone on the Cowboys, as Kenny Moore is one of the best tackling cornerbacks in the league. So this is good for the offense for the Cowboys. And then defensive end Kwity Paye, though, he's dealing with that ankle sprain, has missed the better part of 2 months with that. It looks like he's back practicing in full, should be able to play, really going to help the interior defense of the Colts. As for the Cowboys, linebacker Anthony Barr dealing with a hamstring strain. Barr is back practicing after missing last week. Looks like he's going to be able to play. And then a little bit of illness here. We got wide receiver Michael Gallup and cornerback Trevon Diggs, both sick, both game time decisions on Sunday. Last game of the week, Monday Night Football, New Orleans at Tampa Bay. 25 names on the injury report between these two teams. I did not go through every single one of them. I looked at them all. I'm not going to talk about all 25 injuries. This show could be another 20 minutes long if I did that. But let's talk about tight end Juwan Johnson dealing with a knee sprain. Played his lowest snap share of the year on offense in Week 12, which may be why he is dealing with this knee sprain now. Could have happened in game. Could be part of the reason why they were working him in a lot less last week. You're going to have to watch this into Sunday. Hope we get some more clarity on it. Only one injury report to go off. Not a whole lot for me to tell you, but just know he is a game time decision, and I'm probably moving off of him at the tight end position if I can find another better or similar upgrade because Juwan Johnson is dealing with this injury. As for the Bucs running back Leonard Fournette, dealing with that hip pointer, back practicing in full. He should be back this week. Sorry for anybody that wanted to start Rachaad White again. Offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs, though, dealing with a high ankle sprain, not expected to play for the next month. Huge injury for the Bucs, who technically are still in the playoffs. Can't believe this at 5-6 that the Bucs are still a playoff team, but they are leading the division. But they're going to be without one of their best young offensive tackles in Tristan Wirfs. And then a few different injuries on the defensive end for the Bucs that are worth mentioning. Safety Mike Edwards dealing with a hamstring. Safety Antoine Winfield Jr. dealing with an ankle injury. And then nose tackle Vita Vea dealing with a foot injury. All of those guys missed practice on Thursday. Of the three, Edwards is the one that I'm the most worried about in terms of missing Monday's game. But two safeties being out could open up the door for big shots down the field with my boy Chris Olave. So I'm hoping that happens, and we'll see. I'm going to be watching a lot of football this weekend. I'm excited. I'm here with Jake. It's going to be a great time. So I hope you guys are watching some football with us and enjoy the weekend. All right, that's it, guys, for the Week 13 Injury Update Show. Can't believe we're already in Week 13. Can't believe that I'm hanging out in Jake's house. Absolute insanity. Want to thank our sponsors, Prize Picks, Fantrax. Also want to thank our boys over at Manscaped. Make sure you use the code Headliners, 20% off and free shipping. Get yourself something nice for Christmas this year. But that's all I got for you guys. Week 13 Injury Update Show is in the book, and the doc is out.